Okay, let's talk about pumping up the Louisiana politics. I mean, there's so much going on. And Tyler, I know that you've been up in Baton Rouge along with Jim with the Louisiana legislature. And why don't you just give us an overview, if you could, about what is going on up there in the second week of the Louisiana legislature?
Well, it's starting, I would say, a bit slowly. The governor, as you know, doesn't have much of an agenda, a very light agenda, and when that happens, and Jim could speak to this because he knows more about this than I do, that it sort of takes a bit of the energy out of the session, and it's not clear exactly what all of the main issues will be, but at least at this point, I would say the main issues are Common Core, which is the set of standards that Louisiana has joined a system with almost all the other states, and there is a group of conservatives who do not like this at all, and they are trying to either pull Louisiana out of Common Core or at least modify it. Although I did a live chat with on Thursday with State Representative Cameron Henry, Republican from Metairie, one of the leaders of those who want to get rid of Common Core. We did a live chat where I work at the Lens, and Representative Henry told me that he didn't think they would be able to repeal Common Core this year. So Common Core is a big issue. Another big issue is the effort by State Senator Robert Adley and a couple others, senators and House members, to repeal or to kill the lawsuit filed by the Southeast Louisiana Flood Protection Authority against 97 oil and gas companies. So they're trying to kill it in the legislature so that that lawsuit will not go forward. And then there's, of course, issues with the budget, as there are every year.
So it seems like, if I might, it just seems like there's no agenda. I mean, it seems like it's more reactionary. Am I correct about that, or?
Well, I might pick up on what Tyler said. I think he hit it right on the head. You know, I was a state senator for 8 years, and I was Secretary of State and Insurance Commissioner. And every single year, I went to the legislature to hear the governor's agenda to set out priorities. Now, maybe legislators would disagree with those priorities, but governors in the past were very specific about, look, here's what we've got to get done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Buddy Romer did that. Kathleen Blanco did that. Mike Foster did that. Edwin Edwards always did that during his 4 terms as governor. Jindal just kind of came in and kind of wished everybody well and made a few general comments. And, of course, he's abdicated the role of being the aggressive leader in the legislature on his quest to seek national office. So I think that's what's happened. There's some floundering around. There's lots of voids. Common Core's found its niche. There's an effort primarily by Democrats to override the governor's efforts to not take all this federal money for health care. This lawsuit has some legs. The governor's kind of a little wishy-washy on it. And I don't mind the governor not setting the agenda. I think the legislature independently should set the agenda. But traditionally the governor has. There's a void, and legislators are kind of floundering down there right now. I had breakfast this morning with several legislators, and they said they're each got their little individual packet of interests, but there's no overall focus on what we're trying to get done in terms of bigger issues.
Jim, can I jump in with a quick question, if I may? The fact that the governor does not have a major agenda or even much of an agenda this legislative session, does that mean that there are no major issues or problems that need to be addressed in Louisiana?
Well, there's a whole litany of issues. It's a question of the overall picture of addressing those issues. You take Common Core. I mean, Common Core has gone from something that was almost a throwaway. It was just so acceptable. The governors, including Bobby Jindal, adopted the Common Core idea. Nobody was against it at the time, and now it's gone down to micromanaging a few little issues in Common Core to make this an entire major issue. Shouldn't be a big issue, but it is. The health care funding shouldn't be a big issue. The things that are big issues really are things that a leadership role from the governor should have worked out months or years ago. So I don't see any major focus to change the direction of Louisiana to clean up a huge problem, because these niches are being cut out. things that should have been taken care of in a fairly routine manner, quite frankly. You take the lawsuit, for example. Well, everybody's got a right to file a lawsuit. There's no doubt about the fact that oil companies have, in some instances, have caused a great deal of damage. That's for the courts to iron out. That's for the courts to work at. If the lawsuits are frivolous, then fine the parties and fine the lawyers. That's how the legal system works, and all of a sudden it's become a legislative issue so that the oil companies can get their niche and not have to face this thing in court. Again, these are all less substantive issues that should have been worked out by leadership and the legislature and the governor months and years ago, but I think that on both sides they've abdicated this leadership role.
Well, let me ask you this from a theoretical standpoint. Isn't it better? Of course, I can make an argument to the opposite, but isn't it better to have the legislature do their business and then present it to the governor? Or, I mean, to me, the governor has too much control, too much power, no matter who the governor might be. So let me just throw it out to y'all.
I think you're right. Sure, ideally, that's what should happen. That's what happens in a number of other state legislators. But this hasn't developed here now, so the legislators are kind of walking around saying, well, we haven't heard from the governor, and there's no leadership emerging within the legislature itself to build that consensus. You have people like Representative John Bell Edwards, who's running for governor over in Hammond, who is putting forth an agenda. Karen Peterson, who's head of the Democratic Party. There's some individual ideas being thrown out, but as far as a party caucus, a South Louisiana caucus, a education caucus, in terms of one group building that consensus, that leadership has not risen to the occasion. There's a void because of the governor's lack of leadership, but the legislature hasn't quite matured enough to say, hey, we got a chance to really evolve and be our own leaders. That so far hasn't happened.
So what's the downside, if I might ask? I mean, is there a downside?
Well, the point I guess I would make, and again, Jim has more direct experience with this than I do, but my sense is in any democracy, and specifically the United States, direction will almost always come from the leader, whether it's the president or the governor or the mayor of a town. And legislatures generally will go along with that, or they will develop an anti-agenda. It's not very easy for a large group of men and women in a legislative arena to develop their own agenda. And as Jim points out, there's certainly not that tradition in Louisiana. And Chuck Cleckley, more than not, as the Speaker of the House, has been a guy who has gone along during his tenure with what the governor wants. John Alario, President of the Senate, a very, very able politician, but he has also generally gone along with what the governor wants. So if the governor's not there, then you're asking for a big change in behavior, and that's not really something I think we can expect very much of.
Steve, I might say this too. Governors have always been very strong in Louisiana, but my experience as a public official is that governors are receptive to legislative ideas. I remember back in the 70s when Edwards was governor, I went to him on authoring with Representative Pepe Bruno out of New Orleans an open meetings law and a Public Records Act to open up government a lot more. It really was an Edwards agenda, and he said, well, the time has probably come. I hear you. Yes, I'll include that. Let's all get together and push it. So governors were open for that kind of thing. Mike Foster, I took some insurance ideas to Mike Foster. He says, hey, that makes good sense. I'll put it in my agenda. So governors and legislators or other public officials traditionally could work together and kind of bond this relationship. The problem with Jindal is he's an absentee governor. I've had legislators tell me that outside of his opening address at the legislature, they've not laid eyes on him in a year or so. And these are some of his leaders, have not even seen him, let alone talk to him.
Yeah, I know that Tyler has written about that extensively last year, particularly. Tyler, why don't you give us some information about that?
Well, the sort of the refrain is, where's Bobby? I did a story before the legislative session began indicating that the governor didn't have much of an agenda, And at that point, the only legislators, sort of following up on Jim's point, who had met with him recently have been the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the chairs of the two budget writing committees. None other legislators. And then I've been checking with key legislators since then, and none have, except this past Wednesday, the chairman of the various Senate committees had lunch with the governor. But other than that, I don't know of any substantive meetings that lawmakers have had with the governor. And Jim, you've been in that Capitol as an elected official. Isn't that rather rare?
It's extremely rare. And like I say, maybe it wasn't in the governor's agenda, but legislators could bring things and include them in a working relationship. That happened with virtually every governor we've had so far. But Jindal is, Jindal gives a speech 3 or 4 times a week telling people all over the nation that the only job he wants is to be governor of Louisiana. Well, I wish he'd come on back and do that job, because it's really hurt in terms of building any coalition around some of these very important key issues. And then you've had the only separate aggressive role I've seen, well, there's been 2. Some effort by the Democratic Party with John Bell Edwards and Karen Peterson. The other thing is, Tyler mentioned Cameron Henry. David Vitter's influence in this legislature, building a more conservative coalition of younger legislators to kind of take on the governor a little bit and set out his focus, kind of take on his territory, if you will. You can see that coming from Henry and some other legislators. But outside of that, there's a lot of floundering going on in Baton Rouge right now.
Tyler, do you agree with that?
I'm sorry?
Do you agree? In terms of Cameron Henry, obviously y'all had that chat on the lens. And do you think that he's taken marching orders from Senator Vitter?
I don't think he's taking marching orders from Senator Vitter, but he is a political ally. And I had written a story before the legislative session where various people predicted that Senator Vitter, who has played in local politics in Louisiana in ways that are maybe unprecedented, at least in recent memory, for a U.S. senator, that he will play a role in this session. Of course, he's announced his plans to run for governor. He and Bobby Jindal are not political allies, and one of the things that Vitter has done is helped elect various allies, particularly in the House, but in the Senate too, and Representative Henry is one of them.